For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to the Gist on Strategies Global. Hi, I'm Surya Gangadharan. China has some serious policy dilemmas with regard to India. As part of its major power diplomacy, China seeks to engage with India. This is to ensure it doesn't bandwagon with the US in a US led alliance against China. Allied with this aim is the goal of bringing India into the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, the signature campaign of President Xi Jinping. And this is also in direct conflict with China's neighborhood policy or neighborhood strategy, where it is seen as the pre-eminent power and the rule maker. So we are seeing a contradiction in China's policy between its neighborhood strategy and its major power diplomacy. I'd like to bring in the author of this argument, this paper, Antara Ghosal Singh. She's with the Observer Research Foundation in Delhi. She's a China scholar, obviously, and a Mandarin speaker. And she wrote this paper for the Stimson Foundation, the US based think tank. Antara, good to have you. I was very, very interested to read your paper.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for considering my piece for today's discussion and inviting me to talk about some of the major arguments that I have made in this paper. As you're already aware, my paper seeks to answer some of the key questions that has been doing round in India since the last 2 years. That is, why did the 2020 LSE crisis happen in the first place? Why did China choose to violate the existing agreements, disturb peace and stability at the border, and reverse all the progress that has been made so far in China-India relations in the last 45 years? So what are China's thoughts about its relationship with India, and where does it want to take it from here in the future? In the last 2 years or so, there has been lots of discussions on these issues within India, outside India. Different scholars, practitioners have tried to explain the situation at the LSE through different arguments. Some have argued that this was China's reaction to India revoking the special semi-autonomous status of Jammu and Kashmir in 2019. Some has pointed out infrastructure arms race as the immediate trigger for the border crisis, while others believe that the intensifying great power competition between China and the United States is the real reason behind deteriorating China-India ties. While all these arguments are very, very insightful and help us understand various facets of the ongoing crisis, however, to my mind, one drawback in the present discourse is that it focuses on isolated facets of China-India relations. That is, either the endogenous China-India bilateral differences or the exogenous China-US great power competition. Thus, much of the existing discourse cannot provide a complete picture or explanation to the present crisis. But if we try to look at China's domestic debates and discussions on India in the past few years, that can provide a comparatively clearer and more comprehensive understanding of the circumstances that might have led to this crisis. So this particular paper analyzes China's internal debates and deliberations on India in the years preceding the Galwan clash and thereafter to make two key arguments. First is that the 2020 border crisis is likely an outcome of an intensifying conflict between China's major power diplomacy and its neighborhood diplomacy towards India. Before we proceed further, let me first explain what I mean by China's major power diplomacy and neighborhood diplomacy. Going back a little into history, after the launch of the reform and opening up strategy, Chinese foreign policy it strove to move away from the ideological underpinnings that it had. And by the beginning of the 21st century, it has formed a relatively stable diplomatic outlay, which they call major power is the key, neighbors are the first, developing countries are the foundation, and multilateral diplomacy is an important stage. After President Xi Jinping came to power, yet another change was introduced, yet another new strategic concept of major country diplomacy with Chinese characteristics was introduced. And in this strategic outlay, multilateral diplomacy was given top priority, closely followed by major countries, neighboring countries, and developing countries, which
So let me just
together,
halt you
yeah,
there.
yeah.
When you say major power diplomacy, does China see India as a major power?
Uh, so to that question, I think it is not so much important whether China sees or acknowledges India as a major power or a potential major power or a medium power or a swing state or and so on and so forth. What is important to us, what I have argued in the paper, is that we should take note of the fact that there is a clear understanding within Chinese strategic circles that India's cooperation can secure Chinese gains of vital geopolitical and economic consequences, and its non cooperation can pose one of the biggest hurdles to China's global strategy, particularly its South Asia strategy and advancement of its Indian Ocean footprints. We need to understand that, be it concerning China's Malacca dilemma, be it overcoming China's Malacca dilemma, it's hedging against US free and open Indo Pacific strategy, China's advancing its Belt and Road strategy, China developing its economically lagging Western regions, or maintaining the security of Tibet and Xinjiang areas, or if I may say so, to maintain China's continued rise. India's cooperation is a must for China, and this is something we should take note of.
Mhm. So, if India's cooperation is so important for China, why is it that Galwan happened and all those agreements were torn up? What happened?
Yes. So, what I have tried to explain it as as a contradiction between China's major power diplomacy and neighborhood diplomacy. So, what I was trying to explain to you is like what is China's major power diplomacy and what is China's neighborhood diplomacy, and how India is one country that simultaneously in all these three or four categories of
Yeah.
China's strategic outlay. So India is therefore, if you look at Chinese analysis on India, you will see that India is analyzed through multiple lenses at the same time, like China-India dynamics, South Asia geopolitics, China-US strategic competition, and ultimately through the paradigm or the prism of China's rise. So, while analyzing China India relations, focusing on one aspect and letting go of the other will always produce, a lopsided or a skewed understanding of the reality. Only when all these aspects are taken together, then only we can correctly grasp China's thinking towards India. So now to your question, about China's neighborhood strategy, about China's major power diplomacy. I think, it is very clear in the writings of the Chinese scholars and strategists that China's neighborhood strategy is all about China's rise in Asia, which is considered crucial to China's global rise. It is all about China attaining an overwhelming power advantage in Asia, of securing a China-centered regional order with Beijing as the sole leader or rule maker in the region. What is important for us in India to understand is that the Chinese side has expectation that India will not only welcome China's rise in Asia, but also actively facilitate the rise of a China-led economic and political order in Asia while eliminating the US interference from the region.
So let
But
me interrupt you again. Let
yeah,
me interrupt you again. Why should the Chinese believe that India will welcome their rise? Why do the Chinese
yes.
believe this?
So the thing is that, what I could see from their writing is that while seeking cooperation from India, China is also trying to reduce the cost of such cooperation. It wants to hold on to various local advantages like the disputed border or Pakistan, or say China's aspiration for entry, India's aspiration for entry into global bodies as key bargaining chips against India.
Uh-huh.
And therefore it resorts to, say, stealth and deception and power projection as its preferred strategy to deal with India. All its moves are intended to extract to exert pressure on India to adjust its China policy, to convince that standing up against China would cause it to lose its development opportunities and also face isolation in South Asia, and thereby coercing India to give in to Chinese demands unconditionally.
Mhm.
But
So
then, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Please go ahead.
somewhere in this, do you
Yeah.
discern a role by the PLA, where the PLA's views are articulated, or because one gets the impression after what happened in Galwan that the PLA was the decision maker and the policy maker.
What my paper talks about is the broad, overarching strategic thinking within China. So the paper has referred to writings from various sources, including the academic wings, the think tanks of the PLA. I mean, it is also there in the paper. I think neither Chinese Foreign Ministry nor the PLA work in silos. They are all a part of the whole while doing primary research in China. What I often see is a seamless synchronization in thoughts and actions, between various government departments, party officials, think tanks, media, academia, and also between what they discuss and also the practical developments on the ground. So in China, I would say that it is more often than not a whole of government, a whole of society approach to policy planning and execution than anything else.
Hmm. Interesting. Now you were telling me that this paper you wrote was 2 years ago,
Yes, yes.
and it's been published now at the Stimson
Yes,
Center.
yes. I mean, of course, the first draft was 2 years ago. Of course, when you publish a paper, there is a lot of revisions and to and fro between your publishers. So yeah, it takes some time to publish it.
Okay. So you were also mentioning that it gives India this contradiction in the Chinese policy gives India room for maneuver. Is that correct?
Yes. What I have essentially argued in this piece is that the popular perceptions or propositions, such as you often get to hear India doesn't figure prominently in Chinese strategic calculations, or that India's only value to Beijing is its association with the United States, or that it is only India that needs China's support on various issues, but Beijing has very little to gain from India and thus has no obligation to concede anything to India. So I think all these propositions, they do not really hold true in present circumstances. If we look deeper, we can see that India has a very, very important role to play in China's foreign as well as development policy. It remains central to China's energy and economic security now as well as in the future. Just to quote one of the Chinese observers, he writes that maintaining a non hostile, workable relationship with India is by no means an icing on the cake for China. Rather, it is something that is indispensable for Chinese interests today
Hmm.
as well as in the future. However, I think that this aspect is much less explored, even within Indian strategic circles. And hence, my argument that India needs to be better aware of and more vocal about its strategic significance, its strategic value to China. Because as long as we approach our relationship with Beijing solely through the lens of power differential between the two countries, we will continue to find ourselves in a disadvantageous position with very limited options to deal with China. But once we open ourselves up to the idea what our cooperation or non-cooperation can mean or can cause to the Chinese side, how much it can impact the Chinese side, I think we'll have much greater room for maneuver against China. So yes, that has been my conclusion basically to my paper.
So when India says that if we are to restore some balance and stability in the relationship, the disengagement and de-escalation on the border should happen. There should be resolution of the border. You know, does that go against what the Chinese expect India to do?
I think we should negotiate with the Chinese side better. As I just told you, that we do have various leverages. We are important to Chinese policy making. We should just let them know that all this stealth and deception and all those power projection can do so much. Because their South Asia strategy, their Indian Ocean strategy, their Belt and Road strategy is very much dependent on us. So we need to convey this, that we are aware of our advantages vis-a-vis China. We are aware of our value, the strategic value to China, and we should use it as a leverage at the negotiating table.
Mhm. But I'm sure this is conveyed at various levels to the Chinese. I mean, the fact that we've joined the Quad, there's a constant fear that we hear from the Chinese about us bandwagoning with the US, you know. So I'm sure somewhere the Chinese are aware that uh, we are, we could upset their plans very seriously. In a sense,
That's true.
perhaps we already have.
That's true, and it's not just about bandwagoning with the U.S. And that is my one of my key arguments. That China doesn't only see us through the U.S. prism. We are important to their development strategy as well. If you talk about Chinese the Western development strategy, that is very much dependent on our market. Like if you read Chinese newspaper these days, you will know that they are very concerned about. Businesses moving to cheaper South Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam and Cambodia and all those places, and they're very concerned about it because they do not want what they call the hollowing out of manufacturing from China. And actually, they have taken a lesson from the US itself, that they should not, do away, or their manufacturing sector should not be hollowed out like in the US, and it should shift to the western region, so that the eastern region, that is economically much well off than the western region, can look at upgrading itself, like upgrading its upgrading its industry. So for them, Western development is very crucial, and it's going to be even more crucial. Like about the the coordinated development that is being talked about. About common development, common prosperity that they are talking about. It is all about Western development, and if it is Western development, it is all about India. So we need to understand how important India is getting to the Chinese policy making. And yeah, and that is what I think we should talk about more. We should research on more. So yeah.
Do you see in the recent diplomatic visits that have happened, Wang Yi has come here. We have met him at various places, bilaterally and multilaterally. Do you see some indication that we are beginning to move from Galwan? What is your sense?
Sir, if you look at how China has conducted its relation after the Galwan, you will see they have continuously emphasized that we should de-link the border issue or the Galwan, what happened in
Distance them.
Galwan from the, yes, no, not just distancing them, but then to de-link the border issue from the rest of the
Hmm.
relationship. What they are trying to say every time is that border issues should be placed in the right place in the bilateral relationship, and we should look at developing the conditions to solve the border issue. So as I told you, like having a workable relationship with India is indispensable for China, and that is why they are trying to, but of course they are trying to guard against, or they're trying to reduce the cost that is involved to seek India's cooperation. So that is why you see Wang Yi coming to India, and Wang Yi telling that we are not seeking a multipolar Asia or something like that. So they are trying to convince India about about forgetting what is happening, what has happened in Galwan, and move on with the relationship. Because they will always tell you that, oh, China is so important to India. China is, we are, they are going to be even more dependent on us. So we need to even that out basically. So that's all I wanted to do with my paper.
I get the sense sometimes that the Chinese live in some unreal world, where they expect that the world will revolve around them, appreciate who they are, what they do, their rise. You know, I mean, how does this happen?
I do not think there is. I mean, it's just politics. It's just that's how you conduct your diplomacy. I mean, I think they have understanding of everything, and they know exactly where India fits in their strategic calculations. But then that is the best possible solution that serves their interest. That's why they do it that way. It serves their interest to tell India so many times that, oh, you are so dependent on us. You are, you need to listen to us because we are a bigger power. We are 5 times of your GDP. So all these things, it's kind of their strategy to kind of to enhance or to enhance their interest basically. But that just goes well with with their strategy basically. So that's why they are doing it. It goes with their interest. That's why they are doing. So I think they are in no illusion about India or anybody in the world. It just helps their strategy. That's why they communicate in a certain way.
Mhm. So, when you step back and look at the India-China relationship, where do you see this going forward? In what direction?
Well, I have mentioned it in my paper as well, that what China wants is to delink the border issue from the rest of the relationship, and they want to uh, they want to have a workable relationship with India. They do not want India to, I mean, just stand against China at the global level. So they are striving to achieve that. They're striving to have at least a workable relationship with India.
But after having done all that they did and given no explanation as to why they did it, they still want a workable relationship.
Yes, that's what. If you follow the official communications from the Chinese side, they have mentioned it at multiple forum at multiple times, basically, that the border incident should be delinked from the rest of the relationship, and they should we should move ahead with our regular ties and so on and so forth, and we should have a conducive climate to sort out the border issue and things like that. But then, of course, that is where the negotiation comes in. That is where the bargain has to happen. And this bargain is not about just the border issue. It is about what we can offer China and what China can offer to us. So from that perspective, we need to be aware of what we mean to the Chinese policy making, or what we mean, where we stand in the Chinese strategic outlay, and then use it as a leverage against the Chinese side. So that has been the crux of my paper actually.
So, last question: do we understand China? Do they understand us? Do we understand them? Do they study us more closely than we study them?
Yes, what I see is like they study us much more closely than we study them, because they would be like they will scan our newspapers. All the newspapers are scanned. If you just go into the Chinese internet, you will see a regular daily update of what is happening in India, and I think Pakistani sources are also used quite often by Chinese side. I mean, there is a similarity between the Pakistani discourse as well as the Chinese discourse. So they are much more aware of what is happening in China, and I think we should. And yeah, I mean, most of China scholars in India would, I think, agree that there should be more emphasis on studying China and more resources available. We struggle for resources to do study on China. So I think, yeah, it will be useful if there are more resources, more help to study China, because it is something which is very important to India, and it is going to remain so for a very long time. So yeah.
Antara, great talking to you. China is always fascinating subject. for anybody, and I think more so in the current context. So thank you very much, and look forward to meeting up to you again.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. And for all of you who joined us on this conversation, thank you for your comments and observations. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media and Twitter. Thank you and good night.